Welcome to IADS Retail Park, a podcast by the International Association of Department Stores. Here, we explore the cutting edge of retail innovation, strategy, and transformation. From the evolution of department stores to global retail trends, the Retail Park delivers insights, stories, and strategies to help you navigate the ever-changing retail industry. I'm Maya, and I usually steer the ship around here. But for today's episode, I've invited Anchita to join me. She's here to help break down what goes into turning our exclusive reports into something you actually want to hear.
Hey Maya, thanks for the intro. Honestly, it's pretty cool to be chatting about how this show actually gets made. I think a lot of people might be surprised at just how much goes into turning a big written report into a conversation that feels natural, especially when you're using a mix of AI and human editing. So, let's kick things off. What was the moment you realized IADS needed to try podcasting?
It really started with a lot of feedback from our members. Retail professionals are just bombarded with information, emails, dashboards, presentations, you name it. But even with all that data, people were telling us they barely had time to actually process what mattered. It felt like everyone was drowning in info, but starving for meaning. We wanted to bridge that gap and make it easier to connect with the why behind the numbers.
That makes total sense. I've seen it too. So many updates flying around, but barely a second to breathe, let alone reflect. So, why audio? Why not just make shorter reports or more visuals?
Audio just hits differently. There's something about being in someone's ear while they're going about their day that makes it feel personal and memorable. Scott Galloway once said that people who listen to his podcast greet him like an old friend, and I totally get that now. Podcasts fit into people's routines, whether they're commuting, restocking shelves, or just taking a break. And with over 500 million podcast listeners globally, it's not just a niche thing anymore.
Right? And I think there's this misconception that turning a dense report into a podcast is as simple as reading it out loud. But it's actually a whole process. Can you walk us through how we figured out our workflow?
It was a lot of trial and error, honestly. We tried out all sorts of AI tools, Google's Notebook LM, Podcastle, and a bunch of others, but none of them could do everything we needed. So we ended up building this modular system where we use different tools for different steps, but always keep a human editor in the loop. That way, the end result actually sounds like two people having a real conversation, not just robots reading lines.
And that human touch is everything. I remember our first drafts, some were so stiff, others just rambled. The real breakthrough was when we started using Dust and Perplexity to break down written content into back and forth dialogue, and then went in to add all those little details, pauses, clarifying questions, even the occasional tangent. Suddenly, it felt like a real chat.
Exactly, Anchita. We're not just summarizing, we're recreating the rhythm of how people actually talk. And we're not alone. Lots of big retailers are experimenting with audio now. Galleries Lafayette did that Minwheat Oaks Galleries series. Harrods has True Tales from Harrods. And the Chalu Group's podcast has been running for years with everyone from execs to industry experts.
It's really remarkable how quickly the industry is catching on. And it's not just for customers. Some retailers use podcasts for internal training, leadership updates, even onboarding. It's a whole new way to reach people where they are.
Totally. And then there's the tech side. People always ask us how we make the AI cloned voices sound so real and not, robotic. That's a huge part of what makes this work.
Yeah, and it's not just about plugging in a script and hitting play. The voices you hear on IADS Retail Park are based on real team members who volunteered to share their voice samples. We use platforms like Speechify to create those profiles, but then we spend a lot of time tweaking the pitch, pacing, and even the emotional emphasis. It's like directing a radio play, but with AI actors.
And don't get me started on pronunciation. We've had so many takes just to get printums or monoprix right. Even the acronym IADS, we always spell it out, never say it as a word. We use phonetic spellings and manual markup to make sure everything sounds clear and familiar.
Once the script is ready and the voices are set, the real magic happens in editing. We use Audacity to adjust sound levels, add music, and stitch everything together. Then we push the episodes out everywhere: Substack, YouTube, all popular podcast platforms like Spotify and Apple.
And the turnaround is quick. If we need to, we can go from draft to published episode in under a day. That's a game changer for keeping our content fresh and timely.
It's also about accessibility. Not everyone has time to read a long report, but pretty much everyone can find 15 minutes to listen while doing something else. That's why audio just works for busy professionals.
What's cool is that it's not just execs or strategists listening. We've seen frontline employees tuning in too. There's something about hearing a familiar voice, even if it's AI assisted, that just makes the message stick.
And there's research to back that up. People retain information better from audio that feels emotionally real. Plus, most listeners can't even tell the difference between AI generated and human voices these days.
So, for retailers thinking about launching their own audio content, my advice is don't overthink it. You don't need a fancy studio or a celebrity host. Start with what you have. Turn an onboarding guide, a customer story, or an executive interview into a short episode. Use AI for the heavy lifting, but always keep an editorial eye on the final product. The goal is to sound human, not perfect.
And don't be afraid to experiment. Our first episodes were far from perfect, but we learned and improved with every iteration. Sometimes you just need to get started and let the process evolve.
Audio is more than a trend, my friends. It's a new layer of brand presence. It can be an operational tool, a cultural artifact, and a way to build real connection across teams and with customers.
Before we wrap up, Maya, what's your favorite part of making this podcast?
Honestly, for me, it's all about curating a conversation that actually feels interesting and real. Nothing forced, nothing overcomplicated. I love when we can just dig into a topic, keep it straightforward, and make sure listeners get right to the heart of what matters. If someone tunes in and walks away with a clearer sense of what's happening in retail without having to wade through a bunch of fluff, I feel like we've done our job. It's about making things easy to follow and genuinely useful right from the start.
I couldn't agree more. And for everyone tuning in, we'd love to hear your thoughts. What topics would you like us to cover next? And how do you use audio in your own work?
If you'd like to read more about this little experiment, the link will be included in the episode description. As always, thanks for joining us on this special episode of IADS Retail Park. Whether you're poolside, in transit, or just taking a break between meetings, we're glad to be part of your day. For more insights and updates, follow us on LinkedIn at the International Association of Department Stores and check out our Substack for more exclusive content. Until next time, keep evolving and keep listening.
Before we wrap up, just a quick heads up, this podcast features AI cloned voices, carefully guided by human editors to make sure each episode stays clear and engaging. Thanks for tuning in, and catch you next time.